17. That is how many Jeep Grand Cherokees found an Australian buyer in the first 6 months of 2026. Not 17,000. 17. Across every Jeep dealership in the country. And in those same 6 months, Australians bought new cars at a record pace, with BYD coming within 243 units of knocking Toyota off the top of the charts in June. So the money is out there. It is just walking straight past certain showroom floors. These are 15 cars Australian dealers genuinely cannot shift in 2026, ranked from merely struggling all the way down to completely unsellable. 3 years ago, most of the cars on this list were ordinary stock, sitting under the fluorescent lights of a suburban dealership on the Hume Highway or out on a windswept lot in Osborne Park, waiting their turn like everything else. Nothing about them screamed disaster. Then the Australian market changed faster than almost anyone in the industry predicted. Chinese brands went from curiosity to mainstream, 3% of all new vehicle sales in June. And the fuel excise discount started phasing out in July, adding roughly $10 to a tank. Every one of those shifts created winners. It also stranded a very specific group of cars on dealer lots, with nobody coming to collect them. We ranked these using official VFACTS registration data for the first half of 2026, comparing it against the same period in 2025. This is not about opinions or vibes. It is simply about how many actual human beings walked in and handed over actual money. Number 15. The BYD Shark 6. This one is going to annoy people, so let us be precise about it. BYD is not struggling. 2%. The brand is eating the Australian market alive. But exactly one BYD model went backwards, and it is the one that got all the headlines. 9%. Now, 9,493 is not a catastrophe on paper. It is a very healthy number. The problem is what it represents. The Shark 6 was the vehicle that was supposed to crack open the tradie market and take a bite out of the Ford Ranger, and instead it has plateaued while every other BYD in the showroom accelerates. Dealers who ordered Sharks on the assumption of another big growth year are now sitting on stock that moves slower than the Celian parked next to it. What happened is fairly simple. The people who wanted a plug-in hybrid ute badly enough to be first movers already bought one in 2025. The tradies who actually tow four-wheel drives and boat trailers up the Bruce Highway every weekend looked at the towing figures, looked at the payload, and stayed with diesel. Number 15 is not a failure. It is a warning sign that the early adopter well runs drive faster than anyone plans for. Number 14. The Tesla Model 3. Tesla had a fantastic first half of 2026, 7% to 23,588 vehicles. The Model Y was the single best-selling new vehicle in the entire country in both May and June, with 8,072 registrations in June alone, which is the highest monthly figure any model has managed since Holden shut the Elizabeth plant. Tesla is winning. The Model 3 is not. 5% to 20,396. That is not competitors killing the Model 3. That is the Model Y killing the Model 3 from about 3 metros away. There is a broader problem underneath it, and it is the reason used Model 3S are stacking up on independent lots from Dandenong to Nerang. According to the AADA and Autograb annual insights data, a 1-year-old electric vehicle in Australia loses about 25% of its value. 5%, 7%. Read that again. And electric vehicles sit on the used market for somewhere between 55 and 87 days, compared to about 45 for a hybrid. So a dealer taking a Model 3 as a trade-in is buying an asset that bleeds value while it waits. That is why the offers are so brutal. It is not personal. It is arithmetic. Number 13. The GWM Tank 500. GWM is another brand having a genuinely good year. 5% to 30,359 vehicles, with the Haval Jolion small SUV doing 11,480 units and the H6 doing 7,730. Almost the entire lineup posted double-digit growth. Exactly one model went backwards, and it is the flagship, 9%. And the reason is one of the oldest traps in the retail car business. The Tank 500 is switching from hybrid power to diesel. GWM announced it, the motoring press reported it, and every buyer who was ever going to walk into a GWM showroom and drop serious money on a 7-seat off-roader immediately decided to wait. That is not stupidity on the buyer's part. That is correct behavior. Why would you buy the version that is about to be superseded when the replacement is already dated? The problem is the dealer already took delivery of the hybrid stock. Those cars are sitting on the lot right now with a big sticker in the windscreen, and the salesperson knows exactly what is coming. This decision seemed small at the time. It was not. Announcing a powertrain change before you have cleared the old stock is how you turn a functional SUV into a paperweight with alloy wheels. What stings for GWM is that the Tank 500 is not a bad car. It has a proper ladder frame, real low range, and it undercuts a Prado by a serious margin. It just has the wrong engine for about 6 more months. And there is a second layer to this that buyers rarely think about. When a powertrain gets switched mid-life, the version that gets orphaned is the one the used market never learns to price. In 3 years, an auction house valuer in Altona is going to look at a hybrid Tank 500 and have almost no comparable sales to work from because the diesel will be the one everybody bought. Thin data means conservative valuations. Conservative valuations mean you eat the difference. So if a dealer offers you 8 or 10 grand off a hybrid Tank 500 this month, do the sum properly. That discount is not a gift. It is a partial refund on depreciation you have not experienced yet. Number 12. The Chery C5 and E5, 8% in the first half of 2026 to 24,964 vehicles. Every single model in the range went up, except one, 9%, and the reason is standing about 20 feet away in the same showroom wearing the same badge. 6%, making it Australia's best-selling small SUV outright, ahead of the Hyundai Kona on 13,132 and the Haval Jolion on 11,480. The Tiggo 4 is cheaper. The Tiggo 4 is the one on the television ads. The Tiggo 4 is the one your neighbour bought. So when a family walks into a Chery dealership in Blacktown with $50,000 of finance approval and a toddler on their hip, they walk past the C5 and they buy the Tiggo. Every time. The same thing that built Chery's Australian success, aggressive pricing on the entry model, is exactly what is strangling everything above it. This is cannibalization, and it is the most predictable disease in the car industry, and brands keep catching it anyway. If you are shopping, this is genuinely good news for you. AC5 sitting unsold for 4 months is a car where the dealer principal will take a call at 8 on a Friday night. But it also tells you something about resale. Nobody wants a used version of a car, nobody wanted new. Number 11. The Nissan Patrol Y62. The Y62 Patrol is one of the most loved 4-wheel drives in this country. Ask anyone who has crossed the Simpson Desert or towed a caravan up to Cape York. 8%, which makes it the second best seller for a brand in genuine trouble. Nissan managed 13,854 total registrations in the first half of 2026, and it is no longer a top 10 brand in Australia. But the Patrol has a specific problem that is not really about the car at all. It is leaving. The Y62 is scheduled to depart the Australian market by around August, and the next generation, Y63, has no confirmed local timing. So the buyer standing in the showroom in Toowoomba does the maths in about 4 seconds. Buy the run-out model and own something that is instantly the old shape, or wait for the new one. Most of them wait. Nissan's wider lineup tells the story, 1%. The Duke and the Pathfinder have both been axed. Plans for a new generation Leaf were reversed. The dealer network is now trying to sell a shrinking range of run-out models to a market that has more choice than it has ever had in its history. If you want a Y62 with a big V8 and a big discount, this is your window. Just understand the resale conversation you are signing up for. Number 10. The Maserati Grecale. The Grecale was supposed to be the car that saved Maserati in Australia. A mid-size luxury SUV, priced to fight the BMW X3, aimed at the volume end of the premium market. In the first half of 2026, it registered 98 units, 6%. For context, the Genesis GV70 did 570 in the same period, and Genesis is a brand a lot of Australians still could not pick out of a lineup. The German stalwarts are not even in the same conversation, and that 98 is doing almost all the work for the entire brand. Maserati delivered 101 vehicles in the first half of 2026, total across the whole range. 1%. The Ghibli, the Levante, and the Quattroporte are all dead. The Gran Turismo and Gran Cabrio sports car range accounted for 3 sales. 3. That is the kind of number that makes accountants cry. So what is happening here is a brand collapsing inward. Every model that gets deleted piles more pressure on the survivors, the showroom feels emptier, foot traffic drops, and the resale market price is in the risk that parts and servicing become a problem, which then makes the new car harder to sell, which deletes another model. A Grecale is a genuinely handsome thing with a good engine and an interior that feels special. It is also a car where the depreciation curve does not look like a curve. It looks like a cliff with a trident badge on it. Number 9. The Nissan Navara. This one is almost unfair. The new generation Nissan Navara is built on the same bones as the Mitsubishi Triton. Same platform, same fundamental hardware, 5%. The Triton registered 10,351. Same ute, near enough. 4 times the sales. So the Navara is not failing on engineering. It is failing on the badge and the timing. Mitsubishi got its version to market first, established the pricing, locked in the fleet deals with the councils and the mining contractors, and by the time the Navara arrived, every buyer who wanted that ute had already bought it wearing a different logo. And utes are a badge business in this country in a way that almost nothing else is. A bloke who has run Hiluxes for 20 years does not switch to a Navara because the spec sheet is nice. He switches because his mate did, or because the dealer in town looked after him. Nissan does not have that momentum right now. Its own brand is down across the board, and its dealer network is thinning. So the Navara sits on the lot next to a ute that does the same job, with a stronger badge, a better established price, and a bigger network behind it. The engineering is fine. The engineering was never the problem. And the fleet side makes it worse in a way private buyers never see. Utes in Australia live and die on fleet and government tenders. The councils, the utilities, the mining services contractors who buy 40 at a time and never negotiate one by one. Those contracts get locked in years ahead, and Mitsubishi got there first with the Triton. Once a fleet manager has standardized on a vehicle, trained the workshop on it, and stocked the parts bin, they do not switch for a marginally different badge. So the Navara is locked out of the volume that would make it viable, which means fewer of them on the road, which means fewer used ones for private buyers to reference, which means softer resale. Nissan is not selling a bad ute. Nissan is selling the second copy of a good one, 2 years late, to a market that already made its decision. Number 8. The Skoda Scala. 59. That is how many Skoda Scalas were registered in Australia across the first half of 2026. 2 of them in June, which was an 88% drop for the month. And Skoda has now confirmed the Scala will not continue into the 2027 model year here, with remaining 2026 stock available while it lasts. Which is a very polite way of saying, please, somebody, anybody, take these. Priced from around $33,990 drive away, the Scala is a perfectly competent small hatch from a brand that Australians generally respect. It is also being annihilated in its own segment. The Toyota Corolla did 7,314 in the same period, 7%. The Mazda 3 did 4,080. Even the more expensive Volkswagen Golf, which shares plenty with the Scala under the skin, managed 1,248. And inside Skoda's own showroom, the Kamiq small SUV did 414 and the Kodiaq did 487. So the Scala is not just losing to rivals, it is losing to its own cousins. The lesson here is brutal, and it applies well beyond Skoda. Australians have decided, more or less collectively, that they do not want small hatchbacks. They want small SUVs. Same footprint, same engine, higher seat, and for whatever reason that is the hill the entire hatchback segment is dying on. If you are the kind of person who actually prefers a hatch, congratulations. You are about to be offered the best deal of your life on a car nobody else wants. Number 7. The Cupra Formentor. Cupra was supposed to be Volkswagen Group's clever play. Spanish flair, performance credibility, something that would peel younger buyers away from the mainstream. 4%, which is the worst decline of any Volkswagen Group brand in Australia apart from Lamborghini. And the Formentor, Its bestseller, its hero car, its whole identity, registered 352 units, 3%. That is a nameplate losing nearly two-thirds of its business in 12 months. And it happened despite the brand receiving genuinely fresh product, 8%, 7%. But those increases are off tiny bases, and they are not replacing what the Formentor lost. Even the ancient Attica had what the trade would generously call a dead cat bounce, moving 110 units, up 93%, which mostly means the dealers finally cleared the ones that had been gathering dust. What makes Cupra such a useful case study is that the cars are not the problem. Drive a Formentor VZ, and it is quick, it is sorted, and it feels special. The problem is that nobody in Bendigo or Ipswich knows what a Cupra is. The dealer network is small, the servicing is uncertain, and the used market has no idea how to price one. And in Australia in 2026, a car nobody can confidently value is a car nobody wants to finance. That last point does more damage than most people realize. Financiers and novated lease companies set residual values off historical data, and when a nameplate has almost no history in this market, they price the risk high. A high assumed residual risk means a bigger monthly payment for the same car. So a Formentor can be sharper to drive than a Golf GTI and still cost more per month to run through a lease, purely because a spreadsheet in an office in North Sydney does not trust it. That is how a good car dies in Australia. Not on the road. In the finance calculator. If you are getting value out of this breakdown, hit subscribe. We dig into the Australian car market with actual data every week. No press releases, no dealer spin. So, we have covered the brands that are merely wounded. From here down, we are into the cars that are functionally dead on arrival. Number 6. The Jeep Gladiator. 86, 3%. In a country that buys utes the way other countries buy bread. The Ford Ranger is still the best-selling vehicle in Australia, and the Hilux is not far behind, and the total ute market runs into the tens of thousands every single month. 86. Across 6 months. Across every state. The Gladiator's problem is that it asks Australian ute buyers to accept a set of compromises they have absolutely no reason to accept. The tray is short. The price is high. The fuel consumption is a conversation you will have with yourself every time diesel goes past $2.40 a litre, which it now regularly does with the excise discount phasing out. And it is competing against utes that are cheaper, tow more, carry more, and come with a dealer in every regional town. What the Gladiator has is character. It is the only ute you can take the doors and roof off, and it looks fantastic parked at a campsite at Rainbow Beach. But character is a hobby purchase, and hobby purchases are the first thing that die when a household budget tightens. So the Gladiators sit. And they sit. And every month they sit, the runout discount gets a little more desperate, and every discount torches the resale value of every Gladiator already on the road. There is a cruel loop in that for existing owners. The bloke who paid full retail in 2023 watches a brand new one advertised for less than his is worth on paper, and the moment that happens, his trade-in offer gets rewritten overnight. He did nothing wrong. He just bought into a nameplate the market later decided to abandon, and the manufacturer's discounting did the rest. Number 5. The Peugeot 3008. 92. 3%. And it is Peugeot's second best-selling model. Let that number settle. The bestseller is the Partner, a small work van on 176, 4%. And the redesigned 5008 mid-size SUV, which Peugeot will tell you is up 50%, went from 18 units to 27. Somebody in a marketing department genuinely wrote up a 50% increase there. My favorite detail is the 208 hatch. Peugeot has not officially introduced the new generation model in Australia. It sold exactly one anyway. One. Somewhere in this country there is a person driving a car their own manufacturer does not really sell. And then in July, importer Inchcape announced it was ending its agreement with Stellantis and dropping the brand entirely. Now, Peugeot is not officially dead here. Another distributor may pick it up, or Stellantis may take it on directly. But put yourself in the buyer's shoes. You are standing in a Peugeot showroom looking at a $90,000 decision, and the importer has just walked away. Who honors the warranty? Who supplies the parts? Who values it in 3 years? Nobody in that room can answer those questions, including the salesperson. That is not a car you cannot sell. That is a car you cannot even responsibly recommend. Number 4. The Jeep Avenger. 43.5%. And this one deserves a moment because of the context around it. The Avenger is a small electric SUV. It launched into what is objectively the hottest segment of the entire Australian market, 3% of all new vehicle sales in June. Electric vehicle sales across the first half of 2026 passed 103,700 units, up about 120% year-on-year. BYD alone sold 29,192 electric vehicles. Tesla sold 23,588. The tide came in harder than anyone forecast, and the Avenger sold 43. If you launch an EV into a market growing at 120% and you cannot crack 50 sales in 6 months, the market is not the problem. You are. The Avenger is undone by everything sitting behind it. A Jeep dealer network that is evaporating in real time. A brand whose reliability reputation in this country is being generous, contested. And a price that asks buyers to back all of that with their own money when a BYD Atto or a Chery equivalent is sitting a few suburbs away with a longer warranty and a queue out the door. 43 cars. 265,000 square kilometres per sale, roughly. You would have better odds spotting a Numbat. Number 3. The Alfa Romeo Stelvio. 28. In 6 months, 2%. The Alfa Romeo Stelvio shares its platform with the Maserati Grecale, and the Grecale, on 98, is comfortably outselling it. When you are being beaten 3-1 by Maserati, a brand that sold 101 cars in total, you are not in a sales race. You are in a rescue operation. And the Stelvio is, by most accounts, a legitimately brilliant car to drive. That is the tragedy of it. The Quadrifoglio version has a Ferrari-derived V6 and steering that makes a BMW X3M feel like a filing cabinet. Enthusiasts adore it. Almost none of them buy it. Because the second question anyone asks about an Alfa in this country is not how does it drive. It is what happens when it breaks. And fair or not, that question has followed the brand around Australia for 40 years, and 28 sales in 6 months tells you the answer has not landed. The Stelvio is also on borrowed time globally, with a replacement expected and Alfa's whole future pivoting elsewhere. So a buyer today is purchasing an outgoing model from a brand with a thin network in a segment where German and Korean rivals sell hundreds. The depreciation on that is not a number, it is a whole. And the servicing conversation is the one that finishes it off. There is a genuine Alfa specialist in most capital cities, and if you find a good one, ownership can be perfectly manageable. But try that in Rockhampton. Try it in Albany. The moment you live outside a capital, an Alfa stops being a car and starts being a logistics exercise, and Australia is a country where an enormous share of the money lives outside the capitals. 28 sales is what happens when a brilliant car meets a continent it was never built for. Number 2. The Jeep Compass. 18. 3%, and the model is now officially dead in Australia with no clear timing on its replacement. So think about what that 18 actually is. It is not demand. It is the last few cars in the country being cleared out of dealer stock at whatever price gets them off the books before the end of financial year. 18 people bought a Compass, and a decent share of them probably did not walk in intending to. They walked in wanting something else, and somebody very persuasive pointed at a small SUV with a very large sticker on the windscreen. The part that matters for anyone scrolling a used listing is what happens next. When a model dies in a market this small, the parts supply gets complicated, the specialist knowledge in the dealer network walks out the door, and the residual value collapses because there is no new car price to anchor against. A dead nameplate is not a bargain. It is an orphan. And the Compass was already fighting a losing battle before any of that. It landed in the most competitive segment in Australia against the Tiggo 4 on 13,638, the Kona on 13,132, and the Jolion on 11,480, all of them cheaper, all of them backed by networks that are growing rather than shrinking. 18 versus 13,638. That is not a competition. That is a formality. Number 1. The Jeep Grand Cherokee. 17, 6%. And that is the entire national result for a large SUV that was once the default aspirational family car for an entire generation of Australians. 96.6%. That is not a decline. That is an evaporation. Jeep Australia's official line is that Grand Cherokee stock has almost entirely dried up, and that is true as far as it goes. But it also reveals the real story, because when a brand stops replenishing stock of its flagship, it has already made the decision. The 17 are not sales. They are leftovers. Zoom out, and it is worse. 3%. In the month of June, across the whole country, Jeep delivered 28 vehicles. 28. A single busy Toyota dealership in Western Sydney does that before lunch on a Saturday. 6%. So the Grand Cherokee is the purest possible example of what this whole list is about. A car does not become unsellable because it is bad. The Grand Cherokee is quiet, comfortable, properly capable off-road, and it looks the part in a school drop-off line. It became unsellable because the ecosystem underneath it collapsed. The dealers left. The confidence went. The resale value cratered. And once buyers can smell that, no discount on earth brings them back. 17 cars. 6 months. A country of 27 million people. Line those numbers up, and a pattern emerges that goes well beyond any single badge. Every car on this list is a car that lost its ecosystem before it lost its buyers. The dealer network thinned, or the importer walked, or the powertrain got announced out of existence, or a cheaper sibling ate its lunch. Not one of them is on this list because it is mechanically terrible. That is the part most buyers get backwards. Australia currently has more than 60 automotive brands reporting sales into a market of roughly 1 million and a bit vehicles a year, and even the manufacturers themselves are now openly saying some of them will not survive it. So the honest advice is this. When you are looking at a discount that seems too good to refuse, do not just ask why it is cheap. Ask who is going to be standing behind that car in 3 years when you want to sell it. Because the discount is real, and it is right there in front of you. The risk shows up much later, quietly, on a trade in valuation you were not expecting. If you want to know which side of that equation your own car is sitting on, the video on screen breaks down exactly which Australian models are holding their value in 2026 and which ones are quietly bleeding out. Click it now.